You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in Northport, Florida. I am still in North Carolina with my granddaughter. You can see behind me, I've got a backdrop of Caroline's teaching class. That's her instructional wall. She teaches English to Chinese kids via the internet. So I've got a strange little backdrop going on behind me today, but I've got a very special guest in the house. First timer. We've had Public Works before, but Mike Fear has moved on to a new job. And we've got Billie. And I'm going to let Billie take the reins here for a second and introduce himself to the public. Go ahead, Billie. Go for it.
Hey, happy to make it today. I know we've had a couple hiccups in probably the last month or so getting on, but we're here. Excited to be here. Been with the city now for about, I think, 2 months on Saturday. So, I'm learning a lot. Learning a lot with my new role. Came from the newspaper, local newspaper, the Sun newspapers. So, it's a little bit different than what I was doing previously, but I'm here and I'm excited for it. I'm having a great time.
So give us the backdrop of who you are and where you've come from.
Okay, so I'm actually a Southwest Florida native. Seems like one of the few these days with all the Northeasterners who move down and settle in. But I was born in Port Charlotte, lived in Naples, grew up in Naples, lived in Tampa for about 10 years, went to school in Tampa, moved down here in 2011. My wife actually grew up in Northport, got a job down here, so we moved down here. Previously, I worked, like I said, at the newspaper for about 10 years. I started there as, kind of one of the peons and kind of worked my way up to the department head. My department was the department that designed the newspapers. So every day when you picked it up and this story was here, this photo ran with this story and things like that. That was us. As I grew there, that kind of morphed into doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff, helping select national stories, what went where, having a voice in what made the front, and then as we took on various new products, kind of helping design those. So in the last, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, we started helping with the Key West newspaper. And as they went into our design system, they tasked me with kind of redesigning everything, kind of morphing it into it. So it was technically our system and our fonts and everything that we normally do, but we adapted it to look like theirs so that the readers wouldn't notice any kind of difference. So I learned a lot in 10 years, and a lot of it actually helped me get the position I'm in now. I went into it not really knowing a lot about the newspaper industry and came out with a wealth of information between the actual business of it and the technology that went into designing a newspaper, which I guess a few years before me was really not all that digital. And by the time I was leaving, everything is digital. So
everything.
I tell people I'm in the unique generation where, think when I was maybe 5 is when the original Nintendo came out. And then the growth from that to what we have now, I've had the pleasure of kind of growing as the technology grew, and to think when I was a kid what we would have now it just seemed like, that's only the kind of stuff we'd see in movies. And it's really stunning now what's out there technologically.
We'll just step back a second. And I'll let you know you were in that time frame, and I was at the typewriter.
I do. I actually used a typewriter for some elementary school projects. So, right. It's one of those things that we got our computer in our house when I was maybe 13 or 14, 15, very, very early on computer days. And those were the days where if you had a hard drive that had 128 megabytes of space, you thought that was going to last you forever. And now that would last you
That was a
like a file. So
that was a complete undersell on their behalf.
right, right.
So you've got quite the vast background, and you slid into what position at the city of North?
I am actually now the community outreach coordinator for Public Works. As you said before, Michael Fear had the job previously. Left enormous shoes to fill. Every time I talk to somebody, it's all great things about what Michael did here. And I mean, if you look at social media, especially for solid waste and all that stuff, I mean, he left incredible shoes to fill. So I'm I'm doing my best to even do half of what Michael did. I think I'll be in great shape.
Well, and I'm privileged to have you on my show. Just a couple months in, I know we tried to do it before, but timing of one, you getting started, to a lot of the big meetings in the city opening back up. There's a lot of things going on there for you guys that especially a newbie who just got started, to kind of flow back into the radio station right away. I think you've done a phenomenal job, at least accommodating us in your second month in, because I know there's a lot going on.
Well, I appreciate
so you're, it's a good thing across the board that things are happening, and I'm going to make a quick adjustment. I'm going to hopefully get this mic to, if it's sounding bad on the radio, let me know. I do appreciate the feedback, Marie. She's our tech person, and she's letting me know that there's some issues there. I don't have too much to adjust on my end, but we'll make some adjustments here on further distancing myself from it. Maybe I'm too far on top of it. But the correlation that you described between what you did in the past and what you're doing currently, just 2 months in, give us an overview, because Mike was really solid into what he was doing, and kind of understood it. But give us an overview of your perspective on what you do for the city and why it's so important to get the information out.
Okay. Actually, that was one of my interview questions, so it's great. I feel like
I hooked up with that. You're in a double interview now. No, I'm just teasing.
So I think the big thing with community outreach, people are more angsty about city projects and things like that when they see roads are closed, they see heavy construction equipment, and they don't know what's happening. People just want to know. They want to know where things stand. Why is this happening? When can we expect it to be over? For instance, the Tropicare is getting ready to undergo repaving work. And so there are a couple of days there where we're heavy traffic as far as, the garbage and recycling trucks, school buses in the morning, they all seem to come through right about the same time. And so if, I'm the average Joe and I'm coming down Tropicare, I've got to sit and wait while these, flagmen are holding up one side, and maybe I'm 5-10 minutes late. I want to know why. And so that's a big part of what I do is to be able to let people know. And obviously, you want to give them some advance warning if we can. This is what's happening. This is why it's happening. This is kind of the time frame, how long it should take. The example I gave during my interview, the price widening. The price widening is going to be a pain for everybody involved. There's no way around it. I mean, it's a major artery of the city, and currently it's one lane in each direction. The expansion is necessary at some point. Anybody who's traveled there during early morning school hours, late afternoon school hours, anybody who's done it knows it can be a pain. So it's one of those things where nobody's really going to be comfortable with it, but people they'll take it easier if they know, okay, well, this stretch right now it's awful, but it's only 2 weeks. It'll be done, it'll be done by Friday. or, at least I know on this particular day, maybe I can go this way to avoid that stretch because it's just going to be awful. And it's something like price where it's already bad, and then you're going to eventually add in lane closures and flagmen and stuff like that. Like it, if you have advanced warning, maybe you can find another way around. If you know it's going to be bad directly at Southford, maybe you take Cranberry, or you can take ways to avoid it. So if we can provide that to people, to where maybe someone who's aware of it doesn't end up late to work 20 minutes because they know they have to take a different route. If we can help them with that, I feel like that's crucial. And so, as someone who's lived in Northport now for 10 years, I followed the social media, and I'm aware of its power. And so for me, it's gratifying to be able to provide that to the residents.
Let's talk a little bit about social media, because I've been hitting this pretty hard with a lot of the commissioners, and I want to talk a little bit about how you're going to deal with social media from two aspects. Okay. I want to talk about, I mean this how it sounds, okay? And it's not to be directed at anybody. And I appreciate your time frame with the newspaper, because I think it's going to enhance my second part of this. Okay. With social media, you've got the positive side of what you're trying to do, the information getting out. What are some of the things you're going to try to do to kind of curtail the negative? And I'm gonna preface that by saying the negative information because of misinformation.
Okay.
Can you go ahead and talk a little bit about that?
Well, the biggest way you can curtail the negativity from misinformation is kind of laying out all of the facts. It's a lot of where the misinformation comes from is people hear something from a neighbor that may take off. They tell however many different people, and then people are angry because the misinformation is almost never positive. And so then we'll post something on Facebook, and we've got our big time fans who get on there and hammer us over a lot of stuff. But I feel like the best way to get out in front of that is to lay it all out. Let people know this is what this is going to cost. This is why this is happening. This is how long this is going to take. This is how long we've been studying this. Things like that. If you give people all the information that you have, or all the information that you can provide, it kind of cuts off before it can get there the misinformation.
That's a great answer. I think it's a great political answer at the same time. So I'm going to dig a little deeper. Okay. Because you didn't walk into a situation where everything was perfect. Okay. Right. Mike Fear did a great job of combating the same problem. Okay, because I'm gonna say it's a problem, but it's really not a problem with information getting to people. Right. I think a lot of times people asking a certain question, hearing an answer, adapting that answer to how they think, right, and then applying it out there for everyone to on Facebook and different media sources to kind of chew on for a little bit and then run with. You came up with Price Boulevard as one of your hot buttons there, and honestly, I think that's one of the biggest part of misinformation that's going out right now. Along Warren Middle Springs, and I know your effort is 110%, if not more than that, on getting the right information out.
Right.
What what can we do as citizens before we address social media and before we start speaking misinformation? How can we address what's going on within the city? Where would you send them for information? Who would they call? Different things like that. I think we're kind of talking the same game,
right?
I want to go with the side of the population that hears something, twists it, and runs with it. And it's trying to get rid of the twist. And your job is that job. You're
right.
trying to get rid of that little twist. And that's why I said we'll go a little deeper on it, because I don't think you have a easy job.
Right.
Because we have our media source. You're trying to get information out through Facebook and the website, and people are looking. And I've had this conversation with Northport, Ford, and Peterborough. A lot of people are looking for bleeps. They're not looking for articles. They're not looking
right.
for an actual meeting. How do you think we should handle the Price Boulevard thing, where we can like attack it with bullet point?
Okay. The Price Boulevard thing is tricky too, because the phase we're in now, from what I've been told, is we're in the funding, but there's not really, at least from what I've been able to find out, the funding isn't set. So everybody wants to know when is price widening continuing, things like that. And that's part of the tough part, is there isn't necessarily that concrete information. There isn't always. If for you as the average citizen, if that were something that you're looking to find out the information, you can reach out to Public Works. You can give me a call. You can call Public Works and ask for information on price widening. They may point you towards me, but anytime, and it happens in the comment sections, people say, when is this happening? When is that happening? I try to find out as much as I can so that I can project that out. I think the issue is, like you said, people will put a twist. Sometimes there's nothing you can do to get around that. Sometimes you can present the facts to people, and you could present it in a bullet point format. And, like you said, everybody's going to have the twist on how they read it. Unfortunately, things like the price widening, the city sewer water thing, I think some of that is, when you're looking for that information, you're looking to confirm the way you already feel about it. And having worked at the newspaper, one of my favorite things to do was read through the letters to the editor. And it's kind of like the social media comment sections. Everybody's got an opinion. Nobody's necessarily right or wrong. I would read them with an open mind. There were times I'll give you a perfect example. There was one day we ran letters almost back to back where one guy said, we slanted too far to the left. We were a liberal rag covering up for the Obama administration and things like that. And the very next guy said, we leaned way too hard right. And why were we covering for the Republicans who are doing this or that? You'll read what you read. And there are some people who they read it a certain way to confirm exactly what their bias was going into it. So some of that, I don't know that it's a great answer to the question, but some of that is you just can't get around the twist. The best thing we can do is provide the facts of the situation as we have them, and let people decide how they want to read that fact.
Well, and I'm going to let people know that are listening right now. If you're listening on WKDW Radio 97.5 FM, you can also join us on Facebook, WKDWradio.com. You can also join us on Real Talk 97.5 on Facebook. And if you have a question, if you have a thought, you can type it in and that actually will populate it up on our screen during the show, and we can respond directly. Thank you very much for putting that up, Marie. It does let people know that it's out here, and we're trying to build this into a show that gets instant information out direct from sources, and that's why Billie is on with us today. Really is a key part of information getting out in the public works side of things.
Absolutely.
Whether it's a positive or a negative manner, how we get it across, at least you're getting it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And you know, your job is not easy because we're limited. You know, even with the newspaper has columns. You
Right.
didn't have pages. We have pages, but we don't have a loud voice in the real world of media, TV, and different things like that. So we've got the radio station, and we're developing the radio station really with a great relationship now with City Hall and with Public Works, and we're trying to be really the sounding voice for you guys, so that you can get this information out in yet another platform,
Right.
which is 97.5 FM. And kind of speak to the public a little bit about the value of the internet, and what you guys have done there, but also adding in the radio station as a key piece of getting information to listeners.
Well, you know, I mean, the internet, that's kind of the heart of what I'm doing here. It gives you a much quicker ability to get information to people. For instance, about a month ago, we had an FPL outage, that, you know, we heard about that day, like that instant. We didn't know it was coming because of the dump truck off of River Road. Social media and the internet has allowed us to be able to let people know immediately, hey, this is what's going on in your neighborhood. This is why you have no power. If you can check on your mobile phone, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Nextdoor, we're on all of those. If I can tell you right away, this is why you don't have power, there's a lot less time for speculation. It's a lot easier for us to get that information out right away, as opposed to if we don't have the internet, we don't have the radio, having to go around door to door or mail things out. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to mail you something in time to let you know why your power went out. You know,
Right.
so that is the power of the internet. Is now it's instantaneous. If you follow us on Twitter, if you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Nextdoor, and we have these situations like this, we can get it out right away. And again, going back to the road work, Tropicare, and eventually when it happens, the price widening. We've got some work going on around Chamberlain Road this week, giving people, you know, the power of the internet and social media. We're able to give them advance notice far quicker than if we were to mail something out or walk around door to door, you know, things like that. Like, it gives us the power of immediate communication. And also with the radio to be able to come on once a month, or I'm sure, you know, if the situation merited it, if we had to, you know, go more than that, it just gives us more of a voice, you know, and the internet is a great thing, but not everybody's on the internet either, you know, so having the radio there, because again, working for the newspaper, I know there's a certain demographic that they're set in their ways. The newspaper, the local newspaper, is still alive because there are still a lot of people. I'm a sports fan. There's still a lot of people. We put the box scores in the sports page because they like to read the box scores, and that's just the way they've done it their entire life. They grew up doing that with their parents or whoever, and that's just their way of doing it. Could you find that on ESPN or, you know, or CBS Sports or Fox Sports or whoever on the internet? Sure. But they're set in their ways. They like that. And the radio, I feel, is the same way. There's information always at your fingertips on the internet, but not everybody uses that. We had someone actually contact us. One of my first social media posts was about the Recycle Coach app that we have, that every week, gives you reminders. This is what's supposed to go out this week. This is your collection day, all that stuff. And someone reached out and said, hey, what if, we don't really use the phone apps and stuff? Well, that's great. We've got it set up so you can sign up for an email list. So not everybody's on Facebook, not everybody's on Instagram. So again, emails is another way for us to communicate, and people listen on the radio. I mean, I listen to talk radio every morning on the way to work and every night on the way home from work. And it's not something that even my wife doesn't understand how I bother to listen to it, but I'm set in my ways. It's what I like. And so, that's what the local radio gives us the power to do, is the people that aren't necessarily following everything on social media, but they listen to the radio. Some people just sit in the afternoon and listen and relax and just listen to the radio. And so that gives us that power as well.
And I have to give you guys kudos, because the information is there. Okay. And the reason I was digging in on that was it's the hardest. That is probably one of the hardest things to answer is that the addressing of the misinformation.
Right.
And I liked what you said. I believe your words were, people choose how to listen to the answer.
Right.
And I love that answer, because it is so true. You can have two people. I mean, we played this in back in school, where you had two people hear the same thing, and by the time it got to the end of the line, it was completely different.
Yep, absolutely.
And that 50 years ago is still happening today. I just think it gets amplified because we do have something now that we didn't have 50 years ago, and that's social media.
Right. And exactly.
Voices have magnified, and groups. I say this, and I want to just say it to the groups. If you're a group of people of 25 or 30, just because you have misinformation doesn't mean you should go touting it everywhere, getting everybody in an uproar. Do your homework. Make a phone call. You can call, Billie directly at 941-240-8077. If you need information about a road closing, if you need information about a project that's going on, they're here to really get the information out correctly. And I really want to give you kudos, one, for coming in 2 months in, but I'm really trying to answer that question, because I don't know that there's anybody who could give a better answer, but there definitely isn't anybody who could give 100% answer, because there is no chance of that unless we get citizens to kind of step back, be right first, and then post on Facebook.
I agree absolutely. That was when before I worked at the newspaper. Actually, I worked at Target as a kind of pseudo team lead, and anytime I was training people, I would just let them know, you're going to have people that come in and their sole aim is to find somebody to just argue with about anything, something on the sales floor. They're just looking for an opportunity to tell somebody that they don't know what they're talking about. And I would always tell them, listen, you don't have to take that beating. Come get me. I'll talk to this person and we'll see if we can sort things out. But there are people like that just, they go looking for a specific twist. They hear the right combination of words and that confirms it for them. And there's only so much you can do about that. The best thing you can do is provide the facts, list the facts, and let people do what they're going to do with the information.
Well, and I, there are just some tough conversations that citizens have to have with themselves. I think a lot of times, the city of Northport is not built on a difficult landscape. If you live on a boulevard, you're going to be 4 lanes at some point.
It's tough.
It's a tough pill to swallow. There have been people that have been here for 20, 30 years, and they've lived on a boulevard, and now they hear it's going to change. And because their boulevard was 2 lanes and their front yard was an extra 30 feet deep, and
Right.
they cut in the grass and they forget where they're. It's funny. I hear the comments all the time. Well, nobody told us. Well, they kind of did, because you had a survey, and
Right.
your survey flags didn't go all the way to the street. They stopped about 30 yards before the street, or 30 feet before the street.
Exactly.
And so people were told. They may not have been verbally told, and I don't want to get into that discussion, but we have a pretty easy roadmap in Northport, because we don't have a lot of freeway. That's already governed by the state.
Right.
So we only have 4 lanes or 2 lanes. That's all we have. And it's in the city, within the city limits. It's pretty simple. If you see the word boulevard after your sign, plan on having 4 lanes
Right.
sometime in the future. But I just still can't believe we're having a conversation about price needing to be 4 lanes.
Right.
And I realize that there's people that are on Price Boulevard that may turn off my show from this point forward. It's not that I'm not on your side. This is a city. It's got to function.
Right.
If that doesn't change, what's your solution?
Right.
It's there isn't one. I know we're trying to adapt. I know Public Works doesn't have a lot to do with that. It's more commissioner and city manager trying to soften the blow of the 4 lanes being done.
Right.
But it's your job to get the information out, and it is going to take some time to get that done. Funding doesn't just happen overnight. The project has to get started. We did Sumter several years back. We did Toledo Blade several years back, and look at the value that those 2 streets have brought into our city as far as traffic flow now for 70,000 plus, and we're slated to go to 100.
Absolutely. I moved here, I think, just about as Sumter Boulevard widening was winding down. I think it may have been about 6 to 12 months that I was here, and they were still wrapping up Sumter. And now I can't even look at it and think, oh, this was 1 lane each way. Like,
Right.
I can't imagine it. It
Remember
it increases the traffic flow. I mean, it helps. Imagine all the traffic we have in Northport now on our major roads, Toledo Blade, Sumter, roads like that on 1 lane. Like, to think that is crazy. And again, the price widening thing, it's not something that's going to feel great for anybody. The price tag is probably going to suck. The traffic is definitely going to suck, but at some point it does have to happen. And as far as, what I'm doing, the best thing we can do is give people, updates as fast as we can. It's as we get the information, get it out to you and let you know, hey, this chunk of price is going to be closed down while they're working on it, or it's going to be 1 lane. If you can avoid it, take Cranberry or take Chamberlain, or cut your path off at Salford and take it to 41. That's the best thing we can do. But at some point it's going to happen. All we can do is try to cushion the blow for people.
Hey, slide that question back up, Marie. Mr. English, I know you're an avid listener of mine. I really appreciate you. The biggest problem the city has with boulevards and throughways are the easements. They're not wide enough and don't meet today's standards. Can you kind of address that a little bit? I know you're new. I don't know how prepped you are for that question, but can you kind of address that a little bit?
I'll be perfectly honest with you. I know very little about that.
I figure I know Mr. English well enough. I know he listens to a lot of things, and his information is probably very solid. And that's why they're making some adjustments on how they're trying to soften the 4-lane advanced, our 4 lanes being done. I know that there's some jockeying going on that has to be done yet. I love the question. I love the statement. I will promise you this: I'm going to get one of the city commissioners to talk about the widening of Price Boulevard a little more in depth than we have at this point. I don't see it on the near future, so it is a conversation more than it is anything else, because you can confirm or deny this, Billy. Have they got it funded yet?
They don't. As far as I know, the funding is not yet in place. That's what they're working on now.
And anytime that I know you have to prep for these things, but anytime that you don't have funding, I always say this: to me, it's an empty conversation until you figure it out.
Right.
I got to tell you, if you think the dollar amount's high now, wait another 3 years.
Sure.
And have to do it later. We have the same problem with Warm Mill Springs, where they're trying to do certain things and trying to speed things up. And that dollar amount from a year ago to today is, I bet it's almost double what it would have cost a year ago to do some of the things that needed to be done at Warm Mill Springs. So I can't imagine what's going to happen with roads and different things like that, unless the federal government kind of steps in, which we'll see what they do. They're not too friendly with each other on getting things done for the normal people every day. We'll just have to see where the government goes with that one. If you want to address that, Billy, you can, but you can leave it with me and leave it. We'll let it lie right there. But is there anything you'd like to add in?
I kind of echo your sentiment on the costs of construction. I think as far as things that were kind of unseen with COVID, the material costs have skyrocketed, and I don't think it's necessarily. I try to stay kind of neutral politically. I don't think it's necessarily a testament to who's in office currently. I think it's something that you had all these different fields that shut down or switched their means of production for producing health equipment and things of that nature. And now you're asking to shut that off and get back into their normal production. Obviously, there's going to be an interruption in materials and things like that. And I think that has caused the rise in material costs more than anything. It kind of, obviously the whole pandemic sucked, but that was kind of one of the unseen things that I don't think people have necessarily latched onto, because it's too easy to say, well, wood costs as much as it does now, lumber costs as much as it does now, because Biden's in office. Thanks a lot, Biden. Or there's vehicle shortages, the chip shortage. Thanks a lot, Biden. I don't think it's a political thing. I think it's a matter of, all these fields switch their productions to do different things, and you've got that interruption of flow. Now they're back into their normal flow, but the materials just aren't there yet.
Well, we've got a long way to go, because the end result of any pandemic, and I hope we don't ever have another one, but we might. The end result of a pandemic where, as you said, where you're shutting things down, it's no different than our city. Yes, we worked. A lot of us worked all the way through the pandemic. I know the trash was still picked up, road was still fixed, things were still happening. Parks and Rec, the parks were closed. It took them a while to ramp those up. So we're talking about a park who already had bathrooms. We're talking about a park who already had swings, and it still took them a while to ramp everything back up to where the public felt safe and secure going to the park. Now we're talking about supply chains that worldwide are a disaster. The supply chains have never seen a uniform shutdown like we've had worldwide, and then the expectation of, oh, by the way, turn the switch back on because we're moving forward.
Right.
And I think that's going to be an issue that we're all going to have to talk about down the road. And it's going to come in the form local. It's going to come in the form of, I don't know that they can fund Price Boulevard for a while. I don't know that there's going to be that funding source there. And I know that we've got a team of people within the city that look for that. You have the grant writers, you have all those moving parts that are constantly trying to find funding for different projects.
Right.
And I know that you can talk a little bit about that. Why don't you kind of tee that up and talk about the people that we have in place to get that funding started and address that?
Okay. Well, as far as I know, we have people who obviously are applying for grants, looking to cushion the blow. I believe they're looking at some of the surtax to see if that passes again to cushion the blow. They've reached out, I believe, to state and federal legislators to see what they can do for cushioning the blow, the cost of widening this road. It's not going to be cheap. And, I think the people that are in charge of finding that money are looking they're leaving no stone unturned. They're looking everywhere they can to make sure that we have the funding in place and it's not something that's going to come at a huge cost to the average taxpayer.
Right.
I'll say this. The one thing I've learned from my first 2 months here with solid waste is a great example. Frank Lama runs solid waste, and Frank Lama looks under every stone he can find to save residents money. That's part of his job. How can we do this? How can we do it efficient and not pass the cost on to taxpayers? A good example of that is our recycling program. Last month, we pulled in, I think, 60 more tons of recycling material over April of 2020, and it cost us like $30,000 less to do it because we've devoted ourselves to educating the public on how clean recycling can happen, and B, refining the process that gets that material to the recyclers. So we get them all kinds of clean recycling. They're able to pass that on to the market and give us a kickback. We had 660 tons, I believe, of recycling material in April this year, and it cost us $1.50 a ton to recycle that material, whereas the year before it was like $55 a ton. And these are just little things here and there that Frank does to reduce the cost, to obviously reduce the burden on taxpayers. We have a litany of people with the city who are doing the same thing. They're turning over every stone to try and find ways that we can operate at less of a cost and save money on these projects and save money on these daily activities that these daily duties that we perform.
Are we slated to get any new equipment coming up for Public Works?
That I'm not 100% sure of. The one thing I know we are getting is in the summer, we should be getting the chassis, the semi trucks to pull these new recycling trailers that we have. And what that's going to do for us is it saves us on the cost of having to pay an outside company to come and collect our recycling and deliver it to SSR. We'll be doing that completely, entirely in-house, and that per trip payment, essentially, for recycling loads, is going to be diminished greatly diminished.
Well, and I know, believe it or not, we've pretty much chewed about 50 minutes up, and I know that kind of seems a little strange for you because You wondered how we could talk this much, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I addressed this with Mike a ways back, and I'm glad you kind of brought the trailers up because dealing with cutting costs, dealing with recycling, getting that information out, it was vital to get the community involved with our recycling center. Right. We've also got wear and tear on trucks that I know we're projecting to get our trash trucks to kind of, or not, well, we're not going to really slow the trash trucks down, but the recycle trucks, now they're staying more local than they're going on the road. Kind of talk a little bit about that because we've got about maybe 5 to 6 minutes left.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially the recycling center has already paid for itself. I think Frank said it costs about $330,000 to initially install the recycling center, to build and everything. In like the first year, it cut 100-something thousand in recycling costs, and then this year it's projected to do the same. And so in 2 years, it's already paid for itself. We made one lump payment up front, and the savings that we make every year pay for itself. The thing that does for the trucks, there's less mileage. Obviously, that means less fuel. That means less maintenance. That extends the life of the trucks. We have a program now where we're setting aside money, so when the time comes up for that truck to be replaced, we've already got it essentially paid for. With these, obviously these trucks, there's a lot of maintenance that goes into them. You don't have a truck that large and that expensive without a lot of machinery and things like that to maintain. Having to do less travel for those trucks helps. I know Frank has fought to try and get a transfer station for waste within the city limits, which again, if you're doing that, if you're transferring within city and then exporting, again, you're putting way less mileage on these monster machines that if you can cut that out, why wouldn't you?
Right.
And so that it extends the life of these trucks. And every year we get out of one of these trucks is an extra bonus. Every year that we don't have to spend a couple $100,000 to replace a truck, I mean, that's money saved.
And that's the whole key is it's the cost savings of what we can do on sorting and people really don't realize the effort that goes in to sorting and why we sort. And we have talked about it extensively on the show, why we sort the recycle before it goes out, because there's a cost that goes to contamination, isn't there?
There is, exactly. So again, going back to the April numbers, when we can bring them clean recycling, and that, it's things that we don't have wet cardboard, we don't have liquid in plastic bottles and things like that. When we can bring them clean recycling, it gives them the opportunity to take that recycling to the market, sell it to whomever at a good price, and then that kickback, we get a percentage of that. We get a kickback for that, and that helps cover the cost. When Frank sent out the email about the numbers for the April numbers, I read over it like 5 times to make sure that I wasn't seeing something wrong, that we, for our April recycling, had 660 tons, I believe, and it was for a grand total of $359. Like, that's something that normally costs us over $30,000. And we did it for $300 because we take it to the recycling center. We sort out the waste. So we send that to the dump with the garbage trucks. And we bring them clean recycling, and they're able to, send that off to the market. And the idea that you could pay 54 cents a ton for recycling is just, it's insane to me.
Can you, the next time we talk, can you kind of do some research? Because we got a month now. You've got time to ask questions and get the information. But can you kind of walk back before this recycling center was there. Get some numbers on what we were paying then compared to today, but also kind of explain the cost center of that, and then explain how the city has. I hate using the word profit because it's not profit. It's really about expenditure. Can you kind of explain? It's because we're not a business, all right, but we're trying to cut the expenditure side of it. Can we kind of prove how that center actually has kind of paid for itself?
Absolutely. I'll do some digging.
Yeah, because I think it would be fun to have that conversation. I think it'd be a great little story to add in, and then maybe you could bring somebody from recycling in with you to talk about what they do.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate the time that we've spent together today. My battery's going to go dead at the perfect time of the show. How about that? I couldn't time that to. But Billy, really, I appreciate you being on. Mr. English, I appreciate the chiming in. You want to add anything in there, Billy, before I sign off?
I'm just glad I could make it this time. Glad to finally be on.
Hey, you did a great job. I appreciate it. Keep up the good work. We'll see you next month, and I look forward to getting the information about the cost center savings of the recycling center.
Absolutely. I'll dig in.
All right, buddy. I appreciate your time. Have a great week. You guys, I'll see you on Friday. Peter Bartolotta's on the show. Get ready because it's going to be a rip-roaring good time. We're going to get a lot accomplished. There's a lot to talk about with Romeral Springs. So join us on Friday from 3:04 to 4 o'clock. John Rawlings with Real Talk Radio 97.5 FM saying, have a great day and be safe.